Welcome back, fellow armchair generals. This is Gamer 1745 here with my continuing playthrough of Hearts of Iron 4 with BlackICE Mark II. This looks like it's going good. Looks like they're not having very many bugs that are at least game ending. So the fall of Nanjing. Ooh, Japan's doing well. So I'm really hoping to finish this series. Well, that's smart of Japan. And as I said before, I want to, now that we are over 15%, I want to move it to a early mobilization. With whatever negatives, and there are some negatives there, I think the benefits outweigh that. And let's continue down the road of convoy protection. We want to be as secure as we can in our convoys. Okay, Yugoslavian requests sale of airplanes. No, it reduces consumer goods. We'll give them some aircraft. I think they'll eventually go to war with our enemies. So that's a good thing. Okay. Yes, more factory or naval dockyards. Well, let's build. I think that's the midget submarine. No, this can't be the midget submarine. Because I'm thinking maybe X1. Where's... Okay, visibility. Well, I've about the same sub-visibility. Let's build this. This is longer range. Will not be too range limited. And we can build more. So let's... Okay. Do we need to or just... let's cancel that. Let's go. That will get to 7 dockyards. And then we can get a good naval producer there. Probably Armstrong. It's going to be fascinating, I think, to see if we can hold off Germany. That's sort of my goal. My early goal, at least. If we can defend in here. Okay, now. Again, what are we... I thought I got torpedo bombers in production. Oh, I got naval, not torpedo bombers. I got naval. Well, let's cancel. Just make sure. What I should have. TBs, yeah. Let's cancel this. Yes. Move to the bottom, move to the bottom, move to the bottom. That's what I should have been building. Torpedo bombers instead of naval bombers. Naval bombers are fine, but we need torpedoes. Bombers to fill out our current. Okay. Desert warfare equipment, we're still not producing at all. Or coastal artillery, we need some. So let's do the coastal artillery. I wish buildings could be a thing that has combat capabilities. So you'd build a coastal artillery in a fixed location. Not that all coastal artillery is fixed, but... Okay, now, well, I want to do 2 more of these. And then we're going to start see about building the different types of factories. But so my first sort of goal, which I don't think will achieve, but my first goal is to try to hold France. See if we can do that. The Great Hong Kong Typhoon, 2nd of September 37. An unnamed typhoon hit Hong Kong. Lots of people died. That will be an interesting challenge to see if we can do that. Then, and if we lose France, which I think we will, but we're going to try to then hold the empire as much as we can, including places like this. Okay, development in Australia, and that should, I think, yes, Commonwealth knowledge. Great. Basic truck factories, good. How did Manchukuo get territory down there? But now that they're not, China's done for, in my opinion, now at this point. Just takes some time, but it's going to be done for. Okay. Now, trying to think. Yeah. I keep doing this. Mountain artillery. Okay, Halifax visits Germany. Now you got to remember who Halifax is. Halifax is the when Chamberlain is getting ready to resign, he calls 2 men in. One of them is Lord Halifax, the other is Churchill, to see who is going to succeed him. And Halifax is definitely the most popular of the two, the most popular person with the conservative politicians. Churchill really upset a lot of people because Churchill just knew he was right and the rest of the world was wrong. And it turns out that that was the case. Churchill was right, at least in some things. And the rest of the world was wrong. And Churchill just knew that. And instead of just going along and trying to be a pleasant guy, he told everybody that you're effing wrong. And so he was quite unpopular with the government, shall we say. Where Halifax was very popular with the government people, with the conservatives type. And to the point that Churchill, for a while, left the Conservative Party, crossed the aisle, went to not Labour, but to the Liberal Party, and went into opposition and against the government for a while. So you go against the government for a while, they start, your party, you're no longer a party guy, you start becoming unpopular. So that just sort of tells you who Halifax is that he is the next in line after Chamberlain, basically, to be the next conservative prime minister. So if you weren't going to see a world war and needing a war prime minister, this is the next guy who could be in charge of Britain. And they don't know this at this time, but in late 1940, I think November, Chamberlain dies of intestinal cancer. So he's gone by 40. So if Hitler just waits until 41 to go after Poland or whatever, and Halifax becomes prime minister, this sort of tells you what's happening now. This is obviously, looks like Chinese or something, or Japanese invading China or something, so ignore the picture. You gotta, and I'm more critical of BlackICE when they use bad pictures that I think they're intending to use, as opposed to just they haven't gotten around to getting a picture of Halifax in Germany, and I think they're overly trying to get colorized stuff, and they should just simply do black and white. Okay. As a diplomat for the new government of Neville Chamberlain, Lord Halifax visits Goering. In Germany, Halifax also visits Hitler, who pledges his support to the British Empire. Hitler offers advice on how to deal with the loss with those in India seeking independence. Kill Gandhi, he advises, and if that is not enough, kill the other leaders too. Lord Halifax's friend Henry Cannon will report that Halifax likes all the Nazi leaders, including Goebbels. Cannon reports that Halifax thinks the regime is absolutely fantastic. Okay, so if you had this guy in charge of Britain when the war starts with Germany invading Poland, like I'm saying, if you waited until Chamberlain was either too sick or died and was out of office, how different do you think the world would be today? Yes, I believe at some point Germany's going to go to war with France, and even Halifax at that point will go to war with Germany. I don't think he was some closet neo-Nazi, or not neo at the time, some closet Nazi, or somebody who was going to side with Hitler against France. No, he's going to do it at some point. But he might just give Hitler more time and not build up Germany enough, not build up Britain enough to face Germany in a timely manner. So you have the situation that if Halifax is prime minister, Britain would be less capable, in my opinion, waiting longer, waiting too long, being sort of like of America, in standing up to Germany. And so we could really see a different world. Again, I'm not saying Halifax is a bad guy or he's a collaborator or anything like that. But if he has a good opinion where Churchill just is like, Nazis, evil, we must oppose them. He doesn't care if they're charming. He doesn't care if he were to go visit Goering, and Goering would be a perfect host and be very charming. That doesn't enter into it for Churchill. He is realizing Germany under the Nazis is the major enemy of Britain, and must do everything they can to be prepared and to stop it. Halifax was very prepared in 1940 at the just before the Dunkirk situation to become prime minister and fight the war. He was but he did not see that these as early enough, in my opinion, that these guys were bad enough. So that is an important thing, and people need to understand who these people are. Having not gone through the British public education system, I don't know what they're educated on any of this stuff is, But I know the Americans don't understand this unless they've studied this. And yes, there are most assuredly Americans like myself who study World War II and the situation. But it is not so common, and a lot of the stuff, at least on documentaries and things that I've seen, it really focuses on the war and what was happening then, and not on sort of the lessons and the lead up to it and that kind of thing. Okay, level 2 aircraft factory reach, good. As you saw, a little too fast there. All the benefits. I have not done the math. I am not good on math. You do not want me to do your math work for you. But these are much cheaper. That's, 8,200. Where this is 3,000, 2,000, 3,000, 3,000. So you can build these a lot faster. Now, how much do these improve production versus that? Adding them to the same production line, I'm not quite sure. But I think they're worth building some of these and that they're helpful. I know they're helpful, but meaning as opposed to just building more straight military factories. That's the real question is obviously, like I say, when we're needing to produce desert warfare equipment, we got to have a factory line for that. So let's do that. Don't know how much desert warfare equipment we need, but let's get them in production. Okay, well, we're needing just enough to, let's see about trying to, and this is also what we need to do is a few more civil factories, because we will need to be buying things from the Americans or others quite potentially. First looking for stuff from our own dominions, but that's, then let's buy from the Americans. Yeah. Basic fighter factories, great. And excavation. Yes, as you can see, heavy air factor. So now we're at a 5.7% reduction in build cost, which is a good thing. Both the techs help as well as building more of the factories. Now, like I said, we're going to do a few more of these. Obviously, we can use them to build more things, but also as a trade improvement or trade cost. Dealing with that. Commonwealth knowledge, yay! We're sharing our research back and forth. Okay, New Zealand or South Africa. We'll do South Africa. Hopefully that's sort of out of the way. No one will attack it, and hopefully it'll build stuff for us. We can demand forces and things from them, so yeah, let's go with Grand Battle Doctrine here. Indian National Congress triumphs in provincial elections. In recent local elections, the Indian National Congress has achieved an overwhelming majority for their platform of slow and ordered transition to local government and dominion status in the future. It appears that the Indians have rejected the more radical policies advocated by Gandhi, who have argued for total break with Britain and absolute home rule as soon as possible. Look, Um, culture is important. Governmental culture is more important. I've talked to often about how different colonial powers rule differently, and their legacies, how well they've integrated or improved local elements. But if you look at most of India's governmental institutions, they're very British in orientation. Now, I'm not saying they're trying to speak in a British attitude or just do what the British would do, but they're structurally organized in a British fashion. So I am entirely sure that that India benefited from British rule. Because before that, you had the Mughals and the Maharathas and the other types, and those were basically various forms of absolute monarchies. At least that's my understanding. And so I think that's what you would be seeing in India, whether it would be unified today or disunified, I don't know. So British government was good. But ultimately, the cultural differences between Britain and India mean that India is going to want its independence at some point. I think you could have, through various means, extended out the time period and made it a more amicable breakup, in that a little bit more friendly, where it stays a little bit more in the Commonwealth, if you will. But ultimately, they're going to go on their own. Whatever Britain wanted to do, it's just too big in a modern sense to rule. Okay, well, okay, pretty much we've got this handled for diversity. Okay, uniforms, we're cranking through those. Mountain artillery, we just started producing those. Cruiser tanks, let's go and add a factory to cruiser tanks. It's up at the top, I believe, or near. Yeah. Okay, that will be helpful there. And we have one more factory in production. That's good. And then we're doing more of that. Okay, that's all good. And let's General Dervell retires after many years of service. This upstanding military leader has decided to call it quits. Okay, wish him happy retirement. Don't really know anything about him, probably because he didn't serve in any capacity in World War II. So we no longer have Ironsides is fired. Probably waiting on an event there. Okay, well, so we don't have yet a replacement there. Now here, can we? Yes, we can do this now, and so we should. Probably should have before, of course, but yeah, I think this is partially for the carrier models. That's nice, but the screen is better anti-air, and we're reducing a lot of research time. Yeah, no. That one, Yarrow, that's even better. But we gotta wait till January 1st, 39, which is a year and a bit more. So let's get these. We can change over later, because fairly soon I think we're going to be able to do, or maybe we already are able to do, but are sort of 37 coming up here, which we're at the ending of, but we can start researching better stuff. I'm, as you know, very much, and we can do that now that we just did this, a structural player, infrastructural, wanting to get all that going and good and researched up first. Okay, now, okay, so let's get this. We can get a better carrier going. One of the, or George the Fifth. Yeah, let's do this. One of the reasons, and I very well probably should have, but just what priorities do you follow? Gone with a, do the capital research ships, or research, capital ships research first, is because of the long lead time to build them up. Where destroyers are quicker to build, so you can research them a little bit later. Okay, level 2 armor factory. They got tigers there, yeah. And artillery factory, yes. Okay, let's get a subyard in production. What is that? Oh, and what has come completed? Don't know. Let's. Okay. Oh, carrier. Okay, good. We're researching the new carrier. Let's do full production of that and produce some transport ships. Yep, saving the fruit. And level 4 small arms factory. And we've developed South Africa. And yes, New Zealand. Well, say yes, but let me look around just to make sure. Home Defense, Port Defense, Military Training Act, Air Rearmament. Those are nice, but Industrial Program, British National. Yeah, let's start out with that. We can build up our allies a little bit more later on. We can look here to see our current levels of all of these down here. Submarine yards, munitions, no vehicle factories. So let's put in a few of these. And let's do field uniform. Well, yeah, we could use a stockpile of field uniforms. Where are they? They're probably in here somewhere. We're saving. There we are. Go to 2 of those. Anschluss of Austria. Okay. Germany just got meaner. Well, might as well add a political advisor. It will help us out. Get more political power. Sympathetic judge. Conservative reformer. Okay, towards conservatism. It's good. Political party, political power 5. Silent workhorse. That's a better one, at least to get one. Submarine yards level 1, good. Oh, we had a major, okay. Yeah, let's do this. For the moment, because we're getting a new class of battleship done. So you don't really, and I want to research a better class of carrier. So, well, we can go with them. Good. Good. Heavy cruiser. Well, now that we have our silent workhorse, let's national unity, political power gain, ideological drift defense. I don't think we need drift defense. I don't think anybody's trying to change us. Royalist reformer. Is there effectively a monarchist party going? You're different than the... No, we're not going to try to... Yeah, reduce our consumer goods needs, as well as more political power. Okay, good. What again don't we have? We're pretty low on. Okay, we could use some munitions factories. Let's do 2 of those because those will help out. Now, yeah. Dogfighting experience or fighter sweeps. Interception mission efficiency plus 20%. Air superiority mission efficiency. I'm going to go with air superiority. We clean out the enemy fighters, then we can go after the bombers much more easily. Okay, basic tank factory. So we got that, and then we can come down here and see about branching out to other fields. Yeah, that looks like a nice tech to have. Vehicle level factory 1, good. King George V, great. Now, let's do the illustrious, get that. Being researched now, also I want to make sure, I don't think I did, is just, we're building one of these right now. Well, those are continuous, those are continuous. Let's build just, I don't know that we built too many of those, but one more of those. After this, we have a new battleship type. And now we want to put the battleship type into production. There we go, get through that a little faster. Okay, industrial program, good. We like industrial programs. Let's do the shadow scheme here. Hungary renounces the Treaty of Trianon. In a public declaration, Ferenc Szalasi has renounced the treaty imposed by the Allied powers after the Great War, signed by the Hungarians under protest in 1920. It greatly reduced the size of the country and limited the strength of the military. In his speech, the king already hinted that Hungary may soon look towards reaffirming their claim on territorials taken from them. There was no king in Hungary. The king of Hungary was living in Paris. What's up with this? Yeah, that's interesting. Why isn't where's Admiral Horthy? Okay, well, I don't know. I'm pretty sure he was the leader at the time. Has there been a fascist coup or something there? Monarchist, fascist, maybe. I don't know. Okay, well, let's, because we want a lot of air power. Let's crank out some aircraft factories. That's vehicle level 2. And we're saving, yes, okay. And subdetection 110. Probably want both of these. Charge, better depth charge. Okay, I think this is the better escort one, anti-submarine one. Get that going. Good. Ammunition factory 2. Sigmund Freud arrives in London. By the end of May, arrangements with Freud's own Freud's own departure from for London had become stalled, mired in legally torturous and financially extortionate process of negotiation with the Nazi authorities. Without even going any further, the Nazis weren't upset with Jews leaving Germany or Jews leaving Austria after they took over. In fact, Goering makes a speech after taking over Austria that all the Jews should leave Austria. They're perfectly happy for them to go out. Famous ones, they still sort of want them to go, but it's a bit difficult. But what they didn't want them to do is to take any property or valuables of any sort with them. And they didn't really want them to sell off their land or their houses or whatever at any sort of profitable manner and then be able to take that money out. Sure, they'd like to have Nazi officials buy them at 10 cents on the dollar, but even then they don't want that money to leave the country. So you either sort of had to do, if you've ever seen the movie Sound of Music, sneak out across the border. The Rothschilds, I think it was, of Austria, of Vienna. Basically, as the Germans, almost literally, as the Germans were driving into Austria, on that day, they set up a long car convoy of, I don't know the number, but like 10 cars. They had rushed and packed up about everything they could and drove south for Italy and got out in that sort of time to get their property out of Nazi-controlled Germany, of whatever, and just get out of the country. And so they got out what they could get out and left everything else behind. And so those that could, like that, fled immediately, but most couldn't flee that fast. And the Nazi takeover happened pretty quick. My understanding is I'm blanking on the Austrian Fascist Party. I forget. I'm right offhand. Was a fascist party. It was not a vehement anti-Jewish viewpoint. It looked much more towards Italy for its. Excuse me, just adjusting, sitting here. look towards Italy as its, you know, how thing politically. So it wasn't a specifically it was, somewhat anti-capitalist and whatever, and Jews are seen as that, but it wasn't a let's suppress Jews particularly. So they hadn't felt entirely unwelcome in Austria up until that moment, and they're so it really sort of came as a bit of a surprise that the Nazis came in. So once they get in, you either have to sneak across the border, and it isn't necessarily, not everyone's capable of doing that. You got family, you got, young ones, old ones, whatever, and you got people that grew up in cities, and they just don't know sneaking across the border and, do it without getting caught. They just don't know that kind of stuff, and showing up and I think it's, especially Americans might or might not understand this, but you show up in rural sorts of areas in this parts of the world. Who are you? Show up at the local train station and the local police. What's going on here? What are you all these suitcases you have with you? What are you doing? And so the local Nazi police officials, once they sort of clamp down on the border, you're not necessarily just getting out of the country, sneaking across the border. And so if you're going to go across the border through a border checkpoint, often at a rail station at this time, they're basically going to strip you of anything of value. Okay, you can take out, if you have some nice clothes or something, the Nazis aren't trying to, confiscate dress suits and designer women's clothing, but they're talking money, jewels, documents that claim that you own property in German-controlled territory. Obviously, before the Nazis are invalidating a lot of that stuff. So, documents that claim you own stocks or other things, they want to confiscate all of that stuff. So they search your belongings as you're leaving. So they're really clamping down. So trying to get out, like as I say, extortionate process. They're trying to get everything they can out of Freud before they let him go. However, the Nazi appointed commissar put in charge of his assets, and those of the IPA approved to be sympathetic to Floyd's plight. Anton Scherwald had studied chemistry at Vienna University under Professor Joseph Herzog, an old friend of Freud's, and evidently retained, notwithstanding his Nazi Party allegiance, a respect for Freud's professional standing. Freud left Vienna on the Orient Express on the 4th of June, accompanied by their household staff and a doctor. They arrived in Paris the following day, where they stayed as guests of Princess Maria Bonaparte. Realized that some of the Bonapartes, I'm not sure this Princess Maria Bonaparte, but have an Austrian connection, because Napoleon's marries, I forget which Austrian princess, and Napoleon II, who dies at age 20 or something, is half Austrian, if you will. So there's a long-standing later Bonapartist connection to the Austrian monarchy, so that may have something to do with it there, before traveling overnight to London, arriving at Victoria Station June 6th. So, and also up here, the German people are inundated with propaganda dealing with the Jews. They've been hearing it from the Nazis since the end of World War I. The Jews get wrapped up in that total myth of the stab in the back, that the politicians stabbed the soldiers in the back. Germany was economically collapsing. People were starving at home because they couldn't import enough food, and they had the food that they needed to give to the soldiers to keep them strong and healthy meant that literally people were starving. And there were Germans that starved to death. I'm not saying it was common, but you're losing weight. I don't know if any of you've there's a recent a couple went hiking in rural Afghanistan and then got picked up by the Taliban. Now, the guy had previously been married to a woman who is a strong jihadi, whose father was a good friend of Osama bin Laden, whose brother is a Talibanish terrorist type guy. Was married to her for a few years, and then splits up from her. So this guy, I don't know why he's doing a backpacking trip in, in this part of Afghanistan, up here in the tribal territories. Why he's doing a backpacking. But if you look at a picture of him just before with his pregnant wife going in, he's fat and plump. You look at a picture of him today, he's skinny. They didn't feed him well up there. And so, and she looks much skinnier and gaunt. So I'm not saying that everybody is like starving to death, but they're food rationing on minimum sorts of things. So Germany was collapsing. They may not have been collapsing it on the front at the time that the sort of armistice was signed by the politicians, but Germany as a system was collapsing. So the idea that whether socialist or whether capitalist politicians stabbed German military honor in the back, no. That's a myth that grew up to justify, to excuse, to whatever Germany's collapse, to blame for Germany's collapse. But the Nazis start throwing the Jews as part of this, sort of at their sort of foundational elements in 1922, 1924 elements. So Germany's been hearing this since 1924, and from the government since 1933, that the bad things that the Jews are doing. And so that gets out into the German society. But, that Jewish guy that I know, the professor, or the doctor next door, he's a good Jew. He's not really one of the bad Jews. I believe, this is what the Nazis, or the Germans were sort of thinking at the time. They hear the big lie enough that they start believing that the Jews are bad. And so, yeah, I believe the Jews. But these couple of Jews that I know, they're not really the bad ones. Not that of course, please, there were no bad Jews, unless they were criminals or whatever, because obviously there's criminals from every group. But so that, yes, you have a lot of people that buy into the Nazi belief, become party members, not just because you sort of have to or party pressure, but they really do buy into it and become party members. But they know a couple of good Jews. They know a few good ones, And so those are the ones that are still personal to them. They don't have this vitriol hatred that they do for the group that they see that they believe is damaging Germany. So yeah, this is not an uncommon thing where you have particularly educated Nazis who have had close associations with particular Jews, that they feel that, this is, not such, these individuals are not so bad. So you get that going on. That doesn't excuse their bad behavior, their support for an evil system. It's just realization of the realities of the world. We'll deal with that in a second. Okay, we're continuing here. I'm planning on, I think, buying oil and rubber from other sources. So I'm planning on not going down that road. We'll find out if I'm making a mistake on that. Because I know Japan grabs up a lot of the rubber in the world. That's why the U.S. pursues a synthetic rubber policy during the war. And, yeah, let's produce a couple more dockyards. Sort of get them away from likely bombing. Oh, and we need even more dockyards. Okay. There we go. Or more product. Okay, the Japanese army embraces Nanshiron. The armed forces of Japan have long acknowledged that the Empire of Japan does not possess the natural resources needed for a prolonged war effort. With rising tensions and the outbreak of armed conflict involving the world's major powers, the threat of loss of imports seems greater by the day. To counter this, Japanese strategists have come up with a strategic plan to seize Western colonies in Southeast Asia and the Pacific. These resource-rich regions will fuel the Japanese war economy. This is why nations then, today, view embargoes or other economic measures as acts of war. Because, and this is actually the post-war world setup. I don't know how much many of you know about it, but the thinkers of setting up the post-world war world wanted to try to make interdependency be a thing, so that if a nation like Japan becomes aggressive, you can, instead of bombing them, you can cut off their resources. And so if everyone, or their supply of, I don't know, bullets, or their supply of steel, or their supply, now I do sort of want to say microchips, but Japan produces those, but supplies of something to be able to cut off. And so this way you have to develop consensuses. And this is sort of the modern elitist view of the world, is that by having dependency for major powers, obviously some minor power can always go rogue, North Korea, but for major powers, interdependency between them is required so that there will not be major wars, because they're dependent upon each other, and no group of nations is going to approve of oh yes, modern day Germany, you get to invade France. Yeah, no problem. No, they're going to go, hey, yeah, no, you don't get to do that, or we're going to cut off your trade. And so nations see that as an act of war. Now, of course, so nations want to build up their own independence economically. Now, where you find the problem with that is when it's by force and taking other people's stuff. That's as opposed to building up synthetic industries or something, you know. So that kind of thing. Okay, Test match cricket is broadcast for the first time by the BBC with coverage of the second test of Ashes series between England and Australia live from Lord Cricket's ground. Okay. I didn't hardly understand a single word of that, other than that there's a cricket game, which is a obscure game that only people that are English or part of the Commonwealth, because places like India love it, can get the concept of what the hell they're doing. I literally tried to watch some of it. I tried to figure out the rules of it. I could not. Okay. Got shipyards. Got that. Let's build some more aircraft factories. I want a lot of aircraft. Build one out in Wales. Light aircraft factory level 5 reach. As you can see, we're now 7.5% reduction in cost of builds for most light aircraft types. Coupe du Monde. Okay, 1938 FIFA World Cup. The World Cup of Football is held in France. 18 successive matches. Captivates the planet. Okay, I'm not going to read all this. I don't really care about football, or as we say it in America, soccer, because we have this different thing that you throw back and forth that we call football. why the hell we call it football, I have no concept. Yes, there is the kickoff. Yes, I do understand American football rules. No, I don't normally watch football. I don't care about football. But why we call American football, I have no clue. None whatsoever. The ball sort of looks like a foot, maybe, but still that doesn't make sense. It's like throw ball or carry ball, or I don't know. But I know this is something that if you're outside of America, the world cares about football. Though, of course, I understand FIFA is one of the most corrupt organizations in the world. And on that note, I think we're going to end the episode here. And don't hate the world for liking football. That's fine. I just don't care. So thank you just for watching. You on Twitter, I really appreciate that. You later on YouTube, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to either my YouTube channel or on Twitter. I'm not Twitter. Twitch. Man, I'm saying that wrong, aren't I? On Twitch. Please follow me over there. Really do appreciate that. And of course, liking this video on YouTube is much appreciated as well. And of course, always please post questions, comments, suggestions, ideas, corrections, whatever. Please post. Love your posts. You help me out with that. So see you next time for more Hearts of Iron.